Hi, welcome to Lies and Secrets channel. We hope you will have fun with us. Enjoy watching. Every morning I would rise next to my husband Theodore and feel a sense of routine enveloping me. He was dedicated to his work, always immersed in his business pursuits, oblivious to the growing void within me. It wasn't mere boredom. I felt it was a deep yearning for something more exhilarating, something that transcended the boundaries of my meticulously structured life. This desire was unexpected, yet it emerged with a force I couldn't contain. Nor did I wish to. Pivotal moment arrived one afternoon when I took our cat Whiskers to the vet for her vaccination. What was meant to be a simple appointment turned into a life-altering experience. I had no inkling that this day would set off a chain of events that would transform everything. As I stepped into the familiar animal hospital, the sharp scent of antiseptic mingled with the earthy aroma of fresh hay. While it served as a sanctuary for animals, for me it morphed into a realm of temptation. Dr. Liam, the head veterinarian, had always caught my eye from a distance. His gentle demeanor, soft voice, and striking looks were becoming increasingly hard to resist. He welcomed me with a warm smile, his gaze lingering on mine just a moment too long as we talked about Whisker's health. But that was merely the beginning of a new chapter. A few weeks later, I returned to the hospital, this time under the guise of a fabricated excuse. Theodore had no reason to doubt me. His trust in me was unwavering. I told him I was volunteering at the animal clinic, assisting with the horses and donkeys. He accepted this explanation without hesitation, perhaps too readily. Little did he know the reality lurking behind the scenes. It was during one of these visits that I first encountered them. The horses and donkeys in the back barn, basking in the warm sunlight, were truly magnificent. Dr. Liam guided me through the barn, sharing how these animals served as therapy companions for children in need. Yet as we strolled through the aisles, my attention was captivated not only by the animals but by him, his hands gliding along the smooth neck of a horse, his voice a gentle murmur. I couldn't pinpoint when it happened, but the boundary between admiration and attraction had begun to fade. That afternoon, amidst the quiet of the barn, I found myself gazing at Dr. Liam in a way I had never experienced before. Chemistry between us was electric, and the pull of attraction was undeniable. Felt inevitable that our unvoiced desires would eventually manifest. As weeks turned into months, each trip to the hospital grew more charged. What began as innocent exchanges quickly transformed into something deeper. I sensed Dr. Liam's touches becoming more daring, his words laced with unspoken meaning. With every visit, my fascination expanded beyond him to encompass the animals as well. The hospital infused with its healing, aura morphed into a realm of temptation, a sanctuary where I could abandon my reservations and delve into the long-buried desires that had begun to surface. It didn't take long for Dr. Liam to propose that we delve deeper into our exploration. One serene afternoon, as the clinic enjoyed a lull in activity, he beckoned me to accompany him to the back stable. The horses and donkeys were peacefully settled and an electric atmosphere filled the air. He directed me toward the stall of a colossal horse named Thunder, renowned for his therapeutic work with children, with his hands gently resting on my back. Dr. Liam steered me closer to the magnificent creature, his warm breath brushing against my ear as he spoke softly about the profound bond that exists between humans and animals. And then it happened. What had started as a simple attraction evolved into something far more forbidden. I felt his hands on me, and before I knew it, I was in a whirlwind of passion, the heat of the barn mingling with the rush of adrenaline in my veins. I couldn't believe what was happening, but at the same time I didn't want it to stop the animal. Thunder stood silently in his stall, but my senses were overwhelmed by the thrill of the forbidden thunder hitting me from the back. And Dr. Liam put his tool in my mouth. It was too painful, but I enjoyed it. Once Thunder filled me with his gum, then Donkey comes up and then he filled me with his gum. That moment signaled the start of a perilous game from which I couldn't find a way out. My secret affair with Dr. Liam persisted, yet I also discovered a newfound audacity in my interactions with the animals. Each trip to the hospital became a whirlwind of desire and remorse, but the allure was too strong to resist. The connection I felt between human and creature had transformed into an insatiable longing that I could no longer suppress. As time went on, I found myself weaving more lies to Theodore, claiming I was dedicating extra hours at the clinic. He remained blissfully unaware, however. One evening, as I prepared to take Whiskers for her vaccinations, the situation took an unforeseen twist. Upon entering the clinic, my heart raced with excitement, anticipating Dr. Liam's presence. But as I strolled past the barn, I suddenly halted. There was Theodore standing by the horse stalls, his expression a mix of disbelief and shock. He had come to surprise me only to stumble upon something far more troubling. The look on his face was one of utter astonishment, and in that moment a chilling realization washed over me. He knew perhaps he had caught a glimpse of something amiss, a lingering scent, or even the way I had exited the barn. Truth loomed, large and undeniable. "What's going on here?" Theodore's voice trembled as he stepped closer, confusion and anger swirling in his gaze. Before I could respond, Dr. Liam emerged, his complexion drained, fully aware of the gravity of the situation. The atmosphere crackled with tension, and for the first time in months I felt completely exposed and vulnerable. Theodore turned sharply to Dr. Liam, his jaw tight with fury. "How long has this been happening?" he demanded, his voice laced with tension. I stood there, paralyzed, my thoughts spiraling in chaos. There was no escaping the truth. Now it had been laid bare, and I was trapped with nowhere to retreat. The affair, the hidden secrets, the involvement with the animals. I had crossed too many boundaries, and now I was left to confront the fallout. The silence hung heavily in the air as Theodore's gaze flickered between me and Dr. Liam. I could feel the crushing weight of his disappointment, suffocating me with its intensity. My heart raced each thump, a reminder of the gravity of my actions. For a fleeting moment, I wished I could vanish, but reality had me firmly in its grip. Dr. Liam took a step closer. His expression strained, his voice barely above a whisper. "Theodore, enough." Theodore interrupted, his anger surging like a wave. He turned back to me, his face twisted in pain. "How could you betray me like this with him and with the animals?" His accusation struck me harder than I anticipated. My relationship with Dr. Liam was one thing, but the involvement with the animals was a betrayal. He couldn't fathom. A line I had crossed that left him bewildered. I opened my mouth to respond, but the words eluded me. What could I possibly say? How could I articulate that? It was more than just an affair, that it stemmed from a deeper, uncontrollable urge. It wasn't solely about Dr. Liam. It had morphed into a yearning for something illicit, something raw. Yet the explanations I longed to voice felt alien even to myself. Theodore's expression turned steely as he faced Dr. Liam once more. "And you were aware she was married, yet you still pushed this. You exploited her, both of us." The intensity of his voice was unmistakable, and I could see the revulsion building in his gaze. Dr. Liam recoiled slightly, his face betraying a blend of remorse and embarrassment. "I never intended for it to escalate like this," he murmured, his tone barely audible. "It was never meant to end this way." The atmosphere in the room was thick with tension, the weight of the situation finally sinking in. Theodore's glance shifted to the barn where the animals stood, their calmness contrasting sharply with the turmoil surrounding us. The horses and donkeys remained blissfully unaware of the upheaval, yet to Theodore they represented everything that had gone awry. The bond between us and the animals was too complex for him to grasp, too intricate for anyone to fully comprehend. As Theodore's fury began to cool, a realization dawned on me. This was more than just an affair. Transcended betrayal and deceit. It was about the darker, more twisted desires that had taken hold of me. In a sense, Theodore's anger was justified. I had crossed boundaries. I should have never approached, allowing my cravings to spiral into a whirlwind of forbidden love and primal instincts. "You need to go," Theodore stated flatly, his tone stripped of any warmth. His words were definitive, leaving no space for discussion. "I can't bear to look at you right now. I don't even recognize who you are anymore." The weight of those words crashed down on me, enveloping me in a profound sense of loss. The truth of my actions was finally sinking in. My marriage was irrevocably shattered. Theodore, my husband, the one I had vowed to love and honor, was leaving, and I had no one to blame but myself. Frozen in place, I watched as Theodore stormed out of the barn, the door slamming shut behind him, leaving me alone with the man I had betrayed and the animals that had unwittingly become part of my chaotic life. I turned to Dr. Liam, who stood there in silence, his expression inscrutable. For a fleeting moment, the thought of abandoning it all crossed my mind, but I quickly dismissed it. I needed closure, and as painful as it was, I had to confront the reality of what I had done. "I'm sorry," I murmured the apology, feeling inadequate. I never intended for any of this to unfold. Dr. Liam met my gaze, his demeanor softening just a bit. "You can't change the past," he said gently, "but you have the power to choose your next steps for yourself." His words hung in the air, heavy with significance. Dawned on me that I had been pursuing something elusive for far too long, an escape. A thrill, a fleeting sense of freedom. Without considering the fallout, the affair, the animals. Everything had been a desperate attempt to flee from my reality. But now, standing on the brink of everything I once knew, I felt a profound emptiness where excitement had once thrived. As time went on, I struggled to come to terms with everything that had transpired. Theodore and I were finished. There was no turning back. The feelings of betrayal and shame loomed over me like a dark cloud, heavy and suffocating. The hospital, which had once been my sanctuary, now felt like a cage. I found it impossible to return, even though a part of me longed for the chaotic energy that had once empowered me. Dr. Liam seemed to vanish from my life as well. My attempts to reach him went unanswered, leaving me feeling even more isolated. Eventually, I found myself back in front of the animal hospital, but it was a different world now. The animals, the barn, the clinic, they all served as painful reminders of the person I had transformed into, a version of myself. I hardly recognized guilt clawed at me, relentlessly, a constant echo of my wrongdoings. I had crossed boundaries that were now irreparable, and I was left to bear the weight of my choices. That day I walked away from the hospital feeling the burden of my decisions, pressing heavily on my shoulders. The affair was a closed chapter, and the animals were no longer a part of my existence. Yet the scars remained, and nothing would ever return to how it once was. The woman I had been, the devoted wife, the loving mother, was lost to me. Now in her place stood a stranger, a woman who had allowed her desires to dictate her life, ultimately losing everything she held dear. As I slid into my car and drove away from the hospital, a painful realization washed over me. I had become the very thing I had dreaded, a stranger to myself. A woman overtaken by forbidden desires, left with nothing but the haunting memories of a life that once was. Dear friends, thank you very much for watching. Leave comments, put like, share with friends, and subscribe.